Well, another chapter of the Cascadia Derby is in the books, and for the first time in 10 meetings, we actually saw a draw in the Cascadia Derby. But for the second time in a row for the Portland Timbers, they blew it. They had a chance to go at the top of the Western Conference, and it looked like for 93 minutes they were going to once again get a massive 3 points against their Cascadia rival, and then they did the same thing they did last week against LAFC, which is concede a late goal to drop two valuable points that could have got themselves at the top of the Western Conference. But early on in the first half, I thought Portland were by far the better team, and they were really going with their bread and butter, which is just sit back and try to hit the counter or hit the opponent on the counter attack and allowing the Sounders have all the possession. And that tactics worked as a charm, because 10 minutes into the game, they would score the opening goal, and it would be Flores who scored the opening goal for the Portland Timbers. That has to feel good for Flores, knowing the fact that he just got back in the starting 11, and it looked like he was going to score the winning goal of the Cascadia Derby for a very long time. And that one thing that I didn't mention in the preview back on Monday when I talk about this game coming up today is that one thing the Seattle Sounders cannot do in this game is give up an early goal. Because if they gave up an early goal, you know what Portland's going to do. They're just going to try to sit back and try to hit you on the counter attack. And knowing how much the Sounders struggle in terms of breaking down a low block team, this was going to be a long night for the Sounders if they gave up an early goal. Well, they did give up an early goal, and I just have a feeling that as soon as that happened, the Sounders were in deep trouble, and that I just don't know if they can potentially come back in this game. And at least for the first 25 minutes, the Timbers, they were looking dangerous on the counter attack, while the Sounders were looking incredibly slow to try to get back. And then going forward, they just looked completely lost going for the attack. Like, there's just no fluidity whatsoever going forward on the attack whatsoever. And you know how I said before how the loss of Ruidíaz to this team seems to be more important than I first thought? Well, I think after this game, I can pretty much confirm that the loss of Ruidíaz is probably the factor of why the Sounders attack looks so lost early in this game. Because if Ruidíaz was in this game, and knowing the fact that he loved to play against the Portland Timbers and loved to score against them, if he was on the pitch for the Sounders in this game, there is no doubt that they would look so much more dangerous going forward on the attack. But instead, the attack for the Sounders were looking really stale early on. And then in the 25th minute, to just add some more oddity and some more bad luck for the Seattle Sounders, Jordi Delem seems to went down after it looked like the referee obstructed his runs. And I know there was a lot of Sounders fans were kind of just creating some banters and saying that the ref should get himself sent off because of that. But when I look on the replay, it seemed like it was more of Delem kind of not knowing where the ref is and not knowing where exactly he was on the field, and he just kind of ran right into the referee's shoulder, and that of course caused him to not only went down onto the ground, but he actually was substituted off in this game. And as much as I know the Sounders are going to blame the ref for that, yeah, you can't really blame the ref if he didn't do it intentionally, and two, it seemed like it was your own player just kind of lost his bearings and just kind of ran right into the ref. So yeah, that was kind of a very freak kind of event, just to add more craziness in terms of this Cascadia Derby. But after that, Seattle did start to get some pressure, but again, going forward on the attack, they just look completely lost, and they just cannot break down this Portland low block, and they couldn't find a breakthrough as we hit halftime with the Timbers getting a 1-0 lead. Now, in the second half, the Sounders, they continued to pressure the Timbers, but again, to no avail. Like, there was no real clear-cut chances. They were shooting a lot from outside the box, and that whenever they delivered the ball into the box, it seemed like it was just catching practice for Steve Clark. And that 16 minutes into the game, Seattle actually had 0 shot on goal, and they wouldn't get their first shot on goal until the very end of the game, which of course we'll get to that because that was probably the most important moment of this game. But in the 67th minute, I thought Calvin Leardon had the best chance of the night when for once a cross coming in wasn't actually caught by Steve Clark, and that Leerdam was able to met that cross, but unfortunately he just hits that one wide. But that was probably the closest the Sounders came to equalize up until that point. But then in the 75th minute, Valeri almost put this game away, but his shot that was actually deflected actually went just wide of the left side of the post. But as soon as we saw that happen, just 1 minute later, and on the very next attacking sequence, the Sounders almost equalized, and probably should have equalized when Ladero, who was just open there for about 6 yards out, couldn't quite put that one in frame, but instead skies it out from about 6 yards out, and that the Timbers really got away with that one, because 9 out of 10 times Ladero would actually put that one away. I mean, I know he was kind of a little bit off balance a little bit, but even so, there is not a lot of time you see Ladero miss such a sitter like that and such a big opportunity as he did during that moment. Now, for the last 14 minutes of the game, the Sounders really started to go all out on the attack, and you can kind of see this is kind of the moment where Portland was just going into full bunker mode, and they're looking to try to hold on to this 1-0 lead. And for the most part, I thought it was going to happen, because the Sounders, for the most part, they weren't really showing anything that tells me that they're going to potentially get the breakthrough and finally break down this Timbers bunker until the 93rd minute. When a corner comes in, the Timbers don't deal with it and actually let Will Broom wide open in the back post. He basically slots it into the back of the net to tie the game up at 1 apiece in the 93rd minute, which is around the same time that they can concede the goal to Christian Torres last game against LAFC. And just like that, Timbers blew it again, and that the Sounders got the equalizer. And I think another thing I forgot to wrote here is that was the first shot on goal for the Seattle Sounders, and it turns out that was the only shot that they would get in this game, as even though Seattle was really hungry for the winner and they were really going for it to try to steal all 3 points, the Timbers just able to hold on for a draw. And in terms of the shots in this game, 15 shots compared to 8 that the Timbers had, but only 1 shot on goal compared to the 4 that the Timbers had. 11 shots off target compared to 2 that the Timbers had. Both teams had 2 shots that was blocked, and possession-wise, 59% possession compared to 41% possession. And if you're the Portland Timbers, yeah, I mean, I said in the last game, Timbers fans are probably hoping that old habits is not returning with this team, which is conceding late goals like they did earlier this season, and it seemed like it started to come back. Now, I'm not going to really just go harshly and say that, well, looks like the old habits for the Timbers is starting to come back, and this has probably come back in the worst way. I'm not going to say that until they start to continue to do it over and over again, but that being said, they got to do a better job in terms of closing out games, and especially this is just really what's holding the Timbers back, and this is maybe the thing that they got to fix before playoffs does come, because I can definitely see this team being a contender in MLS and definitely can come out of the Western Conference and make it to MLS Cup. But if they don't cut out these kind of problems that they have, which is concede late goal, they're not going to get very far in terms of the playoffs. And as for the Sounders, yeah, they're desperate in terms of getting Ruidíaz back. And even though this draw, they'll be happy the fact that they were able to snatch a point away from the jaw of defeat. This attack still just looked very lackluster, and if they don't get Ruidíaz back in this team, they just don't look like a team that it was a couple of weeks ago, or the time when they actually had him in the starting 11, which is actually a very lethal Sounders team and looked like a team that could repeat champion of MLS Cup this season. But that being said, let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this crazy game in the Cascadia Derby? And as always, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.